Hey guys, welcome and welcome back. My name is Sonia. I'm a high school senior and also a new immigrant who has lived in the US for over 1 year. I am dedicated to helping high school age new immigrants with their pre-departure preparation and transition to the US. If you're in need of such help or simply interested in such content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for my latest videos. As a person coming from a country in which English is not an official language or frequently used language, I certainly recognize the significance of adapting with a language barrier that every new immigrant like me would go through. As for myself, it took about 3 days.
What?
Yes, not 3 weeks or 3 months, but 3 days for me to actually start feeling comfortable having classes and interacting with people in school. I think this experience makes me somehow qualified to speak on this issue, as I also try to look back and summarize how I developed this adaptive capability in terms of language. So today I want to talk about the tips that I feel like useful when we're trying to fit in a new language environment and even be proficient when using the language. For the context, I did have English class in school before moving to the US. I started learning English since kindergarten, as all kids do. And personally, I have always enjoyed learning it since I'm pretty much a language lover at the same time. One thing that I think is worth mentioning is that when I was in 2nd grade, I kind of kept the habit of reading English textbooks out loud, along with the tapes that came with the books. Although it only sustained for pretty much 1 to 2 years, reading the text out loud following a good sample had set the foundation for me to develop a good accent based on the fact that my native language is not English. And this was actually critical to be done in a young age before everything has fallen into a fixed pattern in your system. But if you're a high school student, telling you this might be a little too late for you right now, so I'm not gonna put this as an emphasis in this video. And now let's get to the next part. Before even coming to the US, I personally was very interested in American pop music. I remember when I was in elementary school, Carly Rae Jepsen was the first pop artist that I ever listened to. I know Carly Rae Jepsen is a Canadian, but I'm just saying the English pop music in general, and particularly in the American area. So the first song that sparked my craze towards American pop music is Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe. It was really a hit at that time, but it was also a pity that Carly is not even active these years and her albums had always been so good. Anyways, ever since that, I started constantly listening to English pop music. And then as I grew up, I became a fan of American pop music. It actually feels pretty weird to say that, American pop music, but I couldn't figure out another way to say English pop. No, that's even weirder. You get what I mean, because you and I both listen to some singers that are not even American in terms of nationality, but overall, they all sing in English. Alright, so if you're also listening to music works that are not in your native language, you may notice that listening to songs is a critical way to absorb the language that are applied in there. When listening to those songs, you'll be exposed to the language in a really enjoyable way, where your brain can be actively turned on and ready to let those words leave an impression in your mind. Moreover, because learning a language and apply it in real life requires you to speak it in an authentic way, which includes the casual phrases or even slangs that native speakers use all the time. And amazingly, these phrases or words could all appear in songs when you listen to them. As you continue such auditory exposure frequently, it is natural that you will learn some language usages from it. So I think for me, listening to those English songs definitely played a huge role in the establishment of my English proficiency. To be honest, when I firstly started listening to English songs, I didn't have the clear intent of learning the language. As I really went into American culture, it was kind of inevitable that I started watching American TV shows as well. And the mechanics here is similar to listening to songs. The TV shows are more straightforward exposure to the language, and you get the most direct usage through dialogues between characters. The first show that I watched was The Big Bang Theory. I really loved the show, and I was really upset that it came to its finale last year. I remember I cried so hard when Sheldon got on that plane with nothing with him and proposed to Amy at her door. It turned out that in terms of language learning, The Big Bang Theory is really a suitable show to do that, except for the professional academic terms in it. So if you need a recommendation from me, I would say The Big Bang Theory is definitely a to-go for you, as I think it's almost a sidekick version of Friends. Now, what is something you can do if you're already in the US and you have no time for music or TV shows? Well, the most important factor for me to achieve that 3-day adaptation was stepping out of my comfort zone. The first day, of course, I could only understand like 50% of what my teachers were saying, and even less for my classmates because, kids are crazy. But I participated in class as much as possible, and every time when I felt like understanding the conversation. I talked to people around me as much as possible instead of keeping silent when I don't feel comfortable talking to others. Again, we should never forget exposure when speaking of language learning. However, passive exposure is definitely way worse than active exposure. What do I mean by that is you should always try to interact with the surroundings, even when you're insecure or scared because of being in a strange environment. Now, what if you feel embarrassed? My suggestion here would be make sure that you let the people you're talking to know you are new to the country and you are not so proficient in the language. You have to recognize that having new people coming in is so common in the US. Especially teachers, they must have seen new immigrant students all the time. They will understand it, and you should never be afraid of asking for help, even just to let others speak a little slower so that you can understand them better. The next level of active exposure is to enrich yourself proactively. For example, when I first came into the country, I had so many vocabularies that I could not understand when people are talking. Sometimes there are even words that are so frequently mentioned, but I did not understand what they meant. When that happened, I would quietly guess the spelling of the words and put them in the dictionary app in my phone. Although 80% of the time my guessing was not accurate, as the apps are really intelligent right now, and most of the time, based on my rough spelling, it can just get what I actually was looking for. So your phone, don't just use it for entertainment. Take advantage of the technology and let it help you without anyone else knowing. Last but not least, exposure, exposure, exposure. Actively expose yourself to English, and more importantly, have faith in yourself that you will be successful in adapting with the language. Be confident and be smart. That's all for today's video. If you like this one, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to my channel because it really does help. Check out my Instagram if you feel like talking or have questions. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I will see you in my next video.